Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Laura Prada from our Telesur studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with our news. You stay with us. We begin in Africa. There are now more than over 14,000 confirmed cases of the novel coronavirus across the African continent, as a number of countries have imposed a range of prevention and containment measures. According to the latest data by Johns Hopkins University and the African Center for Disease Control, most African nations report rising cases. Only 2 nations in the continent, Comoros and Lesotho, are still without a case of COVID-19 as of April 13th. Well, Lesotho is one of only 2 African nations that have yet to record a case of COVID-19. The Prime Minister has already rolled out economic measures to soften the effect of the crisis. Prime Minister Tom Thabane disclosed that a budget had been allocated for a disaster relief fund, with another relief fund set up for the private sector. Like other African countries, recently Lesotho has formally opened talks with the World Bank and the European Union for assistance with the crisis. The International Monetary Fund has approved $147 billion to help address the coronavirus crisis in Gabon. This will come as a loan approved under the Rapid Financing Instrument initiated by the institution to help countries in need. The IMF, like the World Bank, has taken the lead in advocating for significant support given the developing countries facing the consequences of COVID-19. Also in Gabon, they started this Monday confinement measures in the capital and 3 nearby municipalities enforced by security forces to contain the spread of the coronavirus. Prime Minister Julien Nkonge asked residents of the capital and 3 surrounding areas to stay at home as the nation reports 57 cases and 1 death from the coronavirus. Under the restrictions, drivers cannot leave their neighborhoods without being able to prove that they are exercising a profession deemed essential by the government. Libreville was mostly idle, with shops and markets empty and police roadblocks set up at many crossroads as the measures came into effect.
Since midnight, we've seen a big change. We're already in total lockdown. They've closed some towns, not some. All towns are closed. Those who stay in Kanda, stay in Kanda. Those who stay in Libreville, stay in Libreville. Those who stay in Owendo, stay in Owendo, and that's it.
I would like the Gabonese government to review its containment measure with regard to merchants who work in fresh food, because if you don't eat well, you can't.
And forces backing Libya's government of national accord captured 2 coastal sites west of Tripoli on Monday in a new blow to military commander Khalifa Haftar, a year after he launched an offensive on the capital. Haftar's forces started attacks in an attempt to advance with the help of airstrikes by Sudanese and Chadian forces, succeeding in entering Abu Ghraib with a brief control on the town for several hours. However, when the government of national accord forces received military backup and Air Force drones started to fly over the area, they managed to tip the balance to their benefit and caused Haftar's forces massive losses of both life and military equipment.
I salute all the Libyan revolutionaries everywhere, and I salute Sabrat specifically on the occasion of its liberation today. God willing, Sabratag will become a safe city, a city in the hands of the Revolution of February, in the hands of the GNA forces, the Libyan government. What Libyan people are hoping for is democracy and civil rotation of power without military rule. We assure everyone that we will maintain security and invite members of the police and members of the security services from tomorrow to come and assume their duties.
And amid the current global crisis, parts of Africa have been invaded by a second wave of locusts 20 times larger than the first outbreak. Billions of young desert locusts are spreading once again, destroying new sprung crops following seasonal rains. United Nations has since raised its aid appeal for $76 million to $153 million to take immediate actions against the pests.
We are likely to have a two scenario, the corona effect and the food insecurity in the country, because most of the affected areas in the country, the crop, the vegetation, the pasture, the rangeland has been seriously affected, and that combined effect can have disastrous catastrophe in the country.
They are being a menace, eating our grass and even getting to our manilladas. When the animals eat the grass where the locusts have defecated, they fall ill and some even die. When we slaughter our livestock, we find locust faces on their stomachs. Without a doubt, I think they're affecting our health, animals' health, and the environment as well.
Like this, we go for a first break. Remember, follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and on my account at Laura FtS. We'll be right back. We are back with our news. In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro reported this Monday 8 new cases of COVID-19 in the nation.
Del día de hoy, 13 de abril.
Today, April 13, we had 8 new cases of COVID-19. 2 in particular, a man from Aragua, a baker, and another worker in the same bakery tested positive. We will inform the people of Maracay about which bakery and will do the proper follow-up to make sure customers were not infected by these cases.
And also in Venezuela, Vice President Delcy Rodriguez has spoken about the latest COVID-19 figures in Venezuela and, of course, how they are moving on.
So we can now see with these 9 new cases, of which we've provided details on, that Venezuela reaches the 189 mark for cases nationally, fortunately maintaining a flattened curve. We also want to inform that Venezuela is the top country in Latin America with the greatest application of testing. As of today, Venezuela has carried out 203,708 tests. This gives us a figure per 1 million inhabitants of 6,873 tests. I repeat, this number puts Venezuela as the first country in Latin America and the Caribbean in the number of tests carried out, and which has allowed us to take important strides in terms of prevention and to advance with the mechanism wherein house by house, all of the Barrio Adentro mission, Venezuelan doctors, Cuban doctors, students, and the militia are deployed throughout the national territory of this process, which is an access of massive detection which maintains the prevention and control of COVID-19 in Venezuela.
The Brazilian government is building a new field hospital in the state of Goiás near the capital Brasilia. With capacity for 200 beds, the hospital is set to treat COVID-19 patients, but some citizens of the region denounce the hospital is being built in a populated area, raising concerns about their safety. The death toll in Brazil rose over 1,200 on Monday, as there have been over 22,000 confirmed cases across the country.
Here live the people who are more humble. Then it will help the population. It will serve everyone more here. It is easier with more access than the area there in Brasilia.
I think it is important to fight the coronavirus, but in the right place, not where they are building. If you have a hospital almost ready, why didn't you spend the rest of the money there?
In El Salvador, as a response to widespread work stoppage due to COVID-19, social organizations and government officials delivered essential product baskets to those most vulnerable We have more on the following report sent by our correspondent, Ernesto Ábalos. Welcome, Ernesto.
¿Qué tal? Saludos para ti y para nuestra audiencia. Me encuentro en una
I am in the community of Las Palmas, where Major Ernesto Miochat helped distribute solidarity baskets, which will reportedly reach to 300,000 in all the department. There has been made a significant supply of these baskets that contain basic food and other essential products. This is a response of the need for the people to be in quarantine, which may be ended on April 28. Some Salvadorans have also received $300, which the government destined to help around 1.5 million who are not able to go out for their daily activities. Thus, the municipalities and social organizations are trying to cooperate with the population who need access to food. In the latest report, the number of COVID-19 cases reached 137, 6 of which have died. On the other hand, confinement centers, which have surpassed 100 at national level, are being reduced to 87 since the majority of the population who had been in quarantine from the beginning was allowed to leave these facilities.
Thank you, Ernesto. That was Ernesto Ábalos from El Salvador. In the Caribbean, in St. Lucia, they have been working to track the source of transmission and prevent death, as all cases of COVID-19 are reportedly recovering well. Partial shutdown remains in place until April 26 with a 10-hour curfew.
As of April 12, 2020, St. Lucia has recorded a total of 15 confirmed cases of COVID-19. The first 2 cases were repatriated to the United Kingdom between March 24th and 25th, and 4 of our remaining cases have since recovered and discharged from hospital care. Last week, the public health team at the Ministry of Health also took the opportunity to step back, review what has been put in place, assess our position in that famous curve, analyze the data so far, and prepare the strategic pathway on the way forward with our national response for COVID-19.
And a fundraising telethon was held in Jamaica on Sunday evening called Together We Stand, to raise funds to purchase personal protective equipment and supplies for frontline workers fighting the COVID-19. There was a variety of music performed by national artists, some of whom performed on a stage and others joined from home. Jamaicans outside of the country were also urged to contribute. The Ministry of Health and Wellness has confirmed there are 72 cases, including 3 newly diagnosed patients. Police in Ecuador say they have retrieved more than 1,000 bodies in recent weeks from homes in Guayaquil, the epicenter of the country's COVID-19 pandemic. Authorities are digging graves as the disease has overwhelmed hospitals and funeral homes. The Joint Task Force for COVID-19 in the city did not specify the cause of death for the victims, but estimate that COVID-19-related death will reach 3,500 just in the province of Guayas, which accounts for 72% of those infected. According to official figures, Ecuador has more than 7,500 cases and almost half are in Guayaquil. Meanwhile, the country has recorded its first case inside a prison. A guard from the Inca prison in the capital Quito tested positive and is under quarantine in his home. The National Court is asking judges to consider other measures for inmates than the preventive detention to contain the spread. At a press conference in Geneva on Monday, the executive director of the World Health Organization Health Emergencies Program, Michael Ryan, highlighted the importance of maintaining lockdowns to prevent new COVID-19 infections.
But by no means does that mean that it's over. Now is the time for vigilance. Now is the time to double down. Now is the time to be very, very careful. And that does not mean that countries cannot begin to create an exit strategy. It doesn't mean that countries shouldn't be actively planning to do that. But as the Director General said, there are, in that sense, there are things that need to be done. You can't replace lockdown with nothing. You must replace lockdown with a very deeply educated, committed, empowered and engaged community. We are going to have to change our behaviours for the foreseeable future.
Meanwhile, in Italy, COVID-19 death toll stands at 20,465 after the announcement of 566 new fatalities. The number of critically ill patients continued to drop for the 10th successive day.
To date, the total number of positive people, currently positive, is 103,616, with an increase of 1,363 more patients from yesterday. The drop in the pressure on hospital facilities that began about a week ago continues. To date, there are 3,260 patients in intensive care, 63 less than yesterday.
And France's lockdown to contain the coronavirus outbreak will be extended until May 11th. President Emmanuel Macron announced and added that restrictions could start to be eased if current positive trends continue.
In the Grand Est, as in Ile-de-France, hospitals are saturated. Everywhere in France and the French overseas territories, the system is under strain, and the epidemic is not yet under control. So we must continue our efforts and continue to respect the rules. The more they are respected, the more lives will be saved. That is why extracted lockdown must continue until Monday, May 11.
The French president also publicly called for the cancellation of the foreign debt of African countries.
We must also be able to help our neighbors in Africa to fight the virus more effectively, to help them economically too, by cancelling their debt on a massive scale.
In Russia, President Vladimir Putin has expressed concern that the nation is facing a surge in the numbers of patients seriously ill from COVID-19. The number of cases is reported to be growing steadily by 16 to 18% a day.
We see that the situation is changing daily, and unfortunately, it's changing for the worse. The number of infected people has increased. Moreover, there are more and more severe cases of the disease. I have already said it, that the upcoming weeks will be determining.
In the United States, former Vice President Joe Biden emerged victorious this Monday in the Democratic presidential primary held in Wisconsin, a vote marked by questions over whether it should have been held at all amid the coronavirus pandemic. Biden's victory became academic after Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders dropped out of the race. Ahead of the vote, Republican legislative leaders refused to delay the election, and the party won a court battle to keep the date, making Wisconsin an outlier from other states that postponed spring primaries. And also this Monday, Senator Bernie Sanders nominated Joe Biden as the candidate from the Democratic Party. New COVID-19 cases in Iran have been slowing down over the past few days. Iran reported 1,617 new cases overnight this Monday, bringing the total number to 73,303, out of which 4,585 have died. The Iranian Deputy Minister of Health said that both new cases of the novel coronavirus and the number of deaths have been declining across most provinces. Given the improving situation, Iranian authorities are considering easing some restrictions on social life. President Hassan Rouhani said the ban on inter-province travel will be lifted on April 20th.
The health and lives of the population from the coronavirus and its economic and social consequence. Intelligent distancing has the same objective. We must ensure the health of society while preserving the social and economic life.
And Gaza's Hamas government on Monday temporarily reopened the border crossing with Egypt shut due to the novel coronavirus pandemic to allow hundreds of Palestinians to return All those returning will be put into compulsory 21-day quarantine, which could be extended. Interior Ministry spokesman Iyad Al-Bossam said so far only 13 COVID-19 infections have been confirmed in Gaza. Also, Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammad Stayeh says he is hopeful that despite challenges due to the novel coronavirus outbreak, the Palestinian economy can be revived.
We can now increase the number of tests we are doing, enabling us to control more cases. Today we will receive medical assistance from our friend China and Chinese businessmen, including test kits, which we were lacking. The rate of economic growth will be largely negative, and the global economy will enter a state of recession and deflation, which will be the same for the Palestinian economy. The tourist sector is the biggest victim of this crisis, but because this crisis did not destroy infrastructures like wars did, reviving the economy is possible.
Like this, we come to the end of this brief. Remember, you can find this and much more other information on our website, telesurenglish.net. The invitation is made to continue with us with Telesur, always together, connecting our global thousands. Until next time, thank you for watching.